Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Emily, that's enough. Besides threatening me with the baby, is there anything else you even know how to do? Have I spoiled you to the point that you've forgotten how to be reasonable? Hearing Jacob's furious voice, I froze on the spot. A cold wave of hatred surged from deep within my chest and spread through every inch of my skin. It wasn't until a dull pain crept across my belly that I realized it wasn't just in my head. I gently lifted my hand and pressed it to my stomach. Only after confirming that the baby inside me was still there and safe did I begin to suspect something bold and utterly unbelievable. I had been reborn. Before I could dwell on the thought any further, Jacob snapped me back to reality. There's a shortage of doctors on the front lines. The soldiers are out there risking their lives to protect this country. As doctors, we should also be doing our part. This is my way of serving the nation. If you can't support me, fine, but to go so far as to use the baby to threaten me, Emily, when did you become this selfish? At that moment, all I felt in response to his righteous words was bitter irony. My emotions were nothing like they were in my previous life. Back then, when I found out Jacob had secretly applied to be a combat zone doctor, I was overwhelmed with rage. Furious that he'd kept it from me. Furious that he didn't even talk it through with me. But more than anything, I was confused, struggling to understand, and still found myself trying to comfort him. I was 9 months pregnant. The baby was due any day. Why did he have to make that decision right then? After a major argument, I tried to talk to him, begged him to wait until I gave birth. I hoped that if I could stall him a little, maybe he would cool down and reconsider. But I never expected that Jacob, who used to make decisions with me, wouldn't compromise this time. In the end, I used the baby in my belly to force him to stay. Who could have guessed that starting from that very day, he began trading shifts with his coworkers and didn't come home at night. Even on the day I went into labor, Jacob didn't show up. To say I wasn't heartbroken would be a lie, but what I couldn't understand was just because I stood in his way. Did we really go from being partners to strangers? The night our baby was born, Jacob disappeared without a trace. I was murdered while searching for clues about our missing child. Only then did I uncover the truth. It was all Jacob. It turned out he didn't apply to be a frontline doctor out of some selfless desire to serve his country. He just wanted to reunite with his first love, Anna. But I got in his way because I forced him to stay. Anna was killed during a rescue mission by enemy forces. He blamed me for stopping him from seeing her one last time. He held that grudge against me. That's why he had someone kidnap our child. That's why he arranged for me to be killed. After my death, I became a drifting soul tied to Jacob. I saw it with my own eyes. He ordered my body and our child to be disposed of, imped like trash into a filthy, stinking lake. Staring at the still water, he spoke in a voice filled with hatred. You liked using death as a threat, didn't you? Then take the kid and go die. If it weren't for you, I would have gone to the Northern Front. If I'd been there, I would have kept Anna safe. You killed her, so go down there and keep her company. Hearing those words, I trembled with fury. I wanted to strangle him. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to avenge my newborn child, but I couldn't touch him. I could only scream silently in my mind, spiraling into madness. And then I was given another chance. I came back to the very point where all the misery had begun. If that's the case, then this time I'll give him exactly what he wants. I want to see how he destroys himself with his own hands. Perhaps because I stayed silent for too long, Jacob's voice turned even more impatient. Emily, I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you really going to use the baby to threaten me? I came back to the present, pulling myself out of the storm of memories. Only then did I notice the chill on his face when he said those words. He was issuing a final warning. If I said yes, he would treat me the same way he did in the past. So I opened my mouth and said, "You're right. If you want to serve your country, I should support you. I take back what I just said." As soon as the words left my mouth, Jacob finally seemed to register what I'd said. The impatience on his face instantly shifted into shock, but it only lasted for a few seconds before he quickly recovered, wearing a self-satisfied expression. He didn't seem interested in questioning why I suddenly changed my mind. Instead, he just looked down at me from his high horse and said, At least you've come to your senses. Then he eagerly turned to start packing. He had already opened the bedroom door when something suddenly flashed through my mind. My tone turned urgent as I called his name. Jacob. He stopped and turned back to look at me, his face returning to that same expression of annoyance. Before I could even speak, he cut me off with a mocking tone. What? Changing your mind again already? Emily, I'm telling you, playing hard to get doesn't work on me. Even if you keep using the baby to threaten me, I won't change my decision. Even though I'd long stopped expecting anything from him, those words still chilled me to the core. At least say goodbye properly to your parents before you leave, I said. It hadn't seemed to cross Jacob's mind. He frowned slightly and muttered, no need. I opened my mouth to speak, trying to persuade him, but before I could get a word out, he once again misunderstood me. If I find out you went crying to my mom and dad on purpose, I'll never forgive you. So that's what he thought I was trying to do, pressure him by going through his parents. I let out a silent, bitter laugh. If it weren't for the baby in my belly, I would have slapped him already. I placed a hand on my stomach, reminding myself to stay calm after taking a few seconds to collect my thoughts. I spoke with deliberate gentleness. Jacob, you know I'll support you no matter what decision you make, but your parents are getting older. Normally, I wouldn't say we have to tell them about something like this, but war is dangerous. If something were to happen. I trailed off and lowered my head, pretending to wipe away a tear. I didn't finish the sentence. Thinking back to my past life, I had hidden everything from both sides of the family. I didn't want them to worry, so I kept them in the dark the entire time, even when my emotions spiraled out of control. The pregnancy became unstable, and I nearly died from massive blood loss during labor. I told them nothing. And yet, after my death, Jacob had the audacity to claim that I'd run away with another man and taken the baby with me. My parents were devastated. Their hair turned white from stress. But what broke them more was worry. I was their only daughter. When I left that world, they were still desperately searching for me. So in this life, I'm going to make sure they see Jacob's true face. What I didn't expect, though, was the look on Jacob's face when I raised my head. For a brief moment, he looked genuinely remorseful. Just as I was wondering what that meant, he stepped toward me and placed his hands on my shoulders. Emily, I misunderstood. Don't worry, it's just 1 month. I'll definitely be back when the baby is born. I stared at him for a couple of seconds, stunned, my first reaction being, how ridiculous. I laughed to myself, thinking how naive he was. Did he really believe going to a place like that guaranteed a safe return? I had no idea where this confidence of his came from, but then something else struck me. Maybe there was more to what he said. Was Jacob planning to bring Anna back? I frowned. It seemed like a strong possibility. Still, he had agreed to inform both sets of parents about his departure, and that was all I needed for now. I didn't press further. After Jacob left the house, I headed to the hospital. When I returned, we had already had a big argument. Even though I had forced myself to stay calm, afterward I still thought it was best to get myself checked. Of course, I wasn't here for a simple checkup. I came to be admitted into the hospital. That way, when both sets of parents arrived, I wouldn't have to deal with a mess of unnecessary tests and distractions. After the examination, it turned out that the baby really was in a slightly unstable position, and since not many people in this era could afford to be hospitalized, the admission process was surprisingly easy. But what I didn't expect was to stumble upon a shocking surprise while I was there. I hadn't told Jacob that I was coming to the hospital. He probably never imagined I'd show up at a place like this right now, so he was completely off guard, openly discussing something sensitive with someone else. I overheard the other person ask him, "Have you really thought this through? That place is dangerous. Is it really worth it just to see Anna one more time?" Jacob paused for a couple of seconds before answering solemnly. Back then, my mom didn't approve of my relationship with Anna. She got upset and applied for a transfer. I haven't heard from her for years. Now that she's finally sent me a letter, I just feel like I have to see her one more time. I stood there frozen, unable to move or react for a long moment. So, all these years of marriage, and he'd never stopped searching for Anna. That realization made me feel like a complete joke. If he had never gotten over her, then why did he marry me? My eyes, burning with rage, stayed locked on the two of them in the distance. Then I heard the man ask again. What about Emily? Her baby's about to be born. Can you really just leave her like that? Jacob didn't answer, but I already knew what his silence meant. By the time I snapped out of it, the two of them were gone. I didn't even know when they had walked off. Just as I turned to leave, something on the floor caught my eye. I walked over, bent down, and picked it up. When I opened it, I realized it was the letter from Anna. In it, Anna wrote that she was about to be deployed as a battlefield doctor. She said the front lines were dangerous, and that this letter might be her farewell. She wished Jacob well, hoped he would live a good life, and added that if fate allowed, maybe they could meet again in the next life. She hadn't said anything explicit, but Jacob had clearly read between the lines, and now he was desperate to see her. I let out a bitter laugh and slipped the letter into my bag before heading back to my room. The parents arrived not long after. Clearly, they had already been informed, and since they came straight to the hospital, I knew right away they hadn't run into Jacob at home. I vaguely remembered someone saying Jacob had bought a ticket for 3 days later. 3 days later? That would be today. The moment my parents walked in, I could see the concern written all over their faces. But before they could even say a word, Jacob's parents beat them to it with sharp accusations. Where's Jacob? Don't tell me he already left, his mother demanded. Then she turned to me. Emily, seriously, you're his wife. Couldn't you even stop him a little? Absolutely useless. I stared at her coldly. In my last life, after Jacob smeared my name with lies, she had been the one to insult me the most, and even dragged my mother down with me. My relationship with Jacob's parents had always been lukewarm. Not terrible, but far from warm. We only kept up the most basic contact. But that phrase, absolutely useless, I'd heard from her mouth more times than I could count. Every time I failed to rein Jacob in, she'd say it like a curse. I used to think she meant well, that she was just too domineering. But after learning the truth about Anna, I finally realized she'd never truly accepted me. I was just the fallback option, a compromise, a woman she thought could help restrain her son. Now that it was clear I couldn't control Jacob, she naturally grew even more disappointed. A sarcastic smirk ready to answer back. But before I could say anything, my mom jumped in to defend me. Emily's pregnant. How exactly is she supposed to control him? She's already so stressed she ended up in the hospital. What more do you expect her to do? His legs are attached to his body. My dad chimed in too, clearly annoyed. He's about to be a father and still takes no responsibility. Unbelievable. Realizing she had no good comeback, Jacob's mother stayed quiet. After asking which office Jacob worked in, she and his father left together. Suddenly, it was just the three of us left in the room. Me and my parents. They turned their attention to me, full of worry, and began asking questions. In the end, I laid everything bare. I told them I wanted a divorce. Thankfully, they were willing to believe me and, more importantly, willing to support me. What I didn't expect was that just as we finished talking, Jacob burst in, face flushed with anger. He completely ignored my mother and stormed straight toward me. So that's why you suddenly turned so understanding. You brought your parents here to speak on your behalf. Emily, let me tell you something. I'm leaving today. No one's going to stop me. You'd better stop dreaming. I let out a cold laugh. Taking advantage of the fact that he was still fuming, I didn't waste time arguing. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, Fine. Since you've made up your mind, divorce or the transfer to the Northern Front. Pick one. The entire hospital room went silent. My mom recovered from her shock after only a second, but Jacob just stood there, frozen in disbelief. He stared at me like he hadn't heard me right. What did you just say? I pulled the letter out of my bag and tossed it in front of him. With a fiery glare, I demanded, You think I don't know? All that self-righteous talk turns out it's just an excuse to go see Anna. Jacob clearly hadn't expected me to know. His expression twisted in fury, and he shouted, Emily, you went through my stuff. I chuckled. I wasn't about to waste my breath. Just choose. I really thought he'd agree immediately, but to my surprise, I actually saw hesitation on his face. I was stunned and a little amused. In our last life, he was merciless to me and our child, all for the sake of a woman who was already dead. If he could go that far, divorce should have been an easy choice for him. I couldn't figure out what reason he had to hesitate, but just in case he changed his mind, I decided to provoke him a little more. So I said deliberately, "If you still care about this marriage, stay. I'll pretend none of this ever happened. I'm carrying your child after all. Are you really willing to just abandon us?" A man like Jacob, someone who'd once been threatened, would now despise being controlled more than anything. The more I played this angle, the more it would push him away. He'd be desperate to prove no one could control him. Sure enough, before I even finished my sentence, Jacob snapped, "Emily, stop dreaming. I told you no one can." Change my decision? No one. He practically roared the words. I gave him a mocking smile. I wasn't surprised. Calmly, I said, "If you want a divorce, let's go now." His expression was nothing short of hideous, but we were past the point of no return. Even if he regretted it, he had to push forward. "Fine," he spat. "Let's go now. Emily, don't you dare regret this." I scoffed. "That's funny. I should be the one saying that to you. And by the way, you're the one betraying me and our child, so the house stays with us, and I want half the money." To my surprise, Jacob agreed without any argument. Even when I said I wanted to get the divorce paperwork done on the spot, he didn't protest. Seeing how cooperative he was, I let my expression soften just a little. Smiling gently, I added, "Since you're in such a hurry, let's go to the hospital office now. That way you won't miss your train. Don't worry, after you leave, I'll talk to your parents and smooth things over." I curved my lips into a faint smile. Judging by the look on Jacob's face, I guess he must have used some excuse to get his parents out of the way before coming here to confront me. His expression confirmed that I was right, but that wasn't my problem anymore. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, the clerk glanced at my visibly pregnant belly and tried to persuade us over and over again. But when it became clear that neither of us would back down, she finally gave in and helped process the paperwork. I was in a good mood as I held the final document in my hands. The smile had just started to rise on my lips when his next words wiped it clean off my face. Jacob looked at me with a tender, soulful expression. In a gentle tone, Jacob said, "Emily, I know I've wronged you in this. That's why, no matter how unreasonable your demands may seem right now, I'll agree to all of them." Then he gave my belly a long, meaningful look and added, "Take good care of yourself and the baby. We'll talk about everything else when I come back." I stared blankly at his retreating figure, confused for a good while before I finally understood he had agreed to everything so easily because he thought I was just being irrational. I let out a laugh and cursed under my breath. Honestly, he really was just stupid. But no matter what he believed, the divorce certificate was real. The black and white text on paper was real. Even if he did come back someday, it wouldn't change anything. By the time I returned to the hospital, Jacob had probably already boarded the train headed north. As for his parents, by the time they realized they'd been tricked, it was too late. Jacob was already gone, and the only outlet for their frustration was to lash out at me. "Emily, you're his wife. How could you just let him leave like that?" His mother snapped. I noticed my mom starting to rise to speak, so I quickly pulled her back down. I had no intention of telling them about the divorce yet. I knew exactly what kind of person Jacob's mother was. Stubborn and overbearing. Telling her now would only make things more difficult for me. I'd finally managed to get Jacob out of the picture. Right now, my only goal was to rest and prepare for childbirth. I didn't want to waste a single moment dealing with someone like her. Faking frustration, I said, "We fought so hard over this that I ended up in the hospital. I'm pregnant. What more could I have done? I was hoping you all could talk him out of it once you got here, but clearly that didn't help either." Maybe it was the mention of the baby, their grandchild, that finally left her speechless. After a long pause, Jacob's mother forced out a line, "But you still shouldn't have just stood by and let him go. Do you know how dangerous it is over there? If something happens to him, what are his father and I supposed to do?" Jacob was their only son, so of course they were panicking. But what was done was done. No matter how worried they were, there was no turning back now. My eyes grew cold. He made that choice on his own. Whether he lives or dies, he needs to take responsibility for it. Jacob's mother clearly hadn't expected me to say something like that. She stood stunned for a moment, then pointed a trembling finger at me. Emily, he's your husband. How can you be so heartless? I gave a cold laugh. My husband? The one who abandoned me and our child for his so-called first love? What he's done is far crueler than anything I've said. Ever since I noticed someone eavesdropping outside the hospital room, I deliberately raised my voice. If Jacob ever came back, I wanted the whole world to know exactly what kind of man he was. Let him suffer under the weight of gossip and judgment. As expected, the moment I brought up his beloved Anna, Jacob's mother's fury shifted direction. I knew that girl was trouble. After all these years, she's still dragging my son down. I swear I'll find a way to bring Jacob home. Muttering curses, she stormed out of the room. My mom and I exchanged a look and both let out a long breath. When my dad returned with lunch, the three of us sat down to eat together. We talked for a long time. Since it was hard for my dad to get time off work, he bought a ticket back home for the next day while my mom stayed behind to take care of me. Now that I was divorced, I clearly couldn't count on Jacob's mother for anything, but with my own mom around, I felt at ease. 2 weeks later, just like in my previous life, I gave birth to a baby boy. But this time, everything was different. In my last life, my son was frighteningly small when he was born. The doctor said he might be weak and would need extra care. But in this life, the doctor's words were completely different. He said my baby was extremely healthy. When I heard that, I almost couldn't hold back my tears. Not only was my baby strong, but thanks to my mother's devoted care, my recovery was nothing like the painful ordeal it had been before. But what I didn't expect was that just as I was feeling happy and relieved, news about Jacob came in. No one knew exactly how his mother pulled it off, but she really did manage to drag Jacob back, and he didn't come alone. He brought Anna, his first love, with him. When I heard that, I instinctively frowned. I'd thought Jacob might return someday, but I didn't think it would happen this soon. I had just given birth. My body hadn't fully recovered yet, and the last thing I wanted was to deal with him now. But before I could even start worrying, I heard another piece of news. Yes, Jacob came back, but he returned injured. My mom had asked around and came back to tell me that Jacob had lost both of his legs trying to save Anna. He was now completely disabled. After delivering the news, she sighed and said, "Honestly, when you first said you wanted a divorce, I supported you, but I still had some concerns in the back of my mind. But now it looks like karma did its job." And it wasn't just my mom saying that. People all over the hospital were saying the same thing. I overheard quite a few of them myself. They said Jacob had a stable job, a beautiful wife, and now even a cute son. He already had a perfect life, but instead of cherishing it, he chose to abandon everything for his first love. And look how that turned out. If that wasn't karma, what was? So when Jacob was first brought back to the hospital, all around him were whispers like that. I heard he was so angry he passed out on the spot. When I got the news, I couldn't help but laugh. Jacob was the kind of man who really cared about saving face, and now not only was he crippled, but he'd become a walking joke. I bet he wished he were dead. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. We were divorced, so I had no intention of seeing him, not even once. My mom, on the other hand, was thoroughly entertained by the whole thing. When she came back to my room, she couldn't help but share the drama with me in detail. With that light-hearted mood, I was finally ready to be discharged from the hospital. However, just as I was getting ready to leave, Jacob's mother barged into the room, and with her came a barrage of blame. "Emily, what kind of wife are you? Jacob's been back for days, and you haven't visited him once, not even a glance," she scolded loudly. "Go look around. What daughter-in-law acts like you, hiding in a hospital room just because you gave birth, acting all delicate?" Before I could even respond, she huffed impatiently and snapped, "Enough! Hurry up and take the baby to see Jacob. He's been in a terrible mood. Maybe seeing the baby will cheer him up." As she spoke, she reached out to take the baby from me. I immediately took a step back and passed my son into my mom's arms, smiling politely. "He cries a lot. If he makes Jacob more upset, that wouldn't help." I'll go check on him myself. With that, I subtly signaled to my mom to take the baby and leave. The divorce paperwork had clearly stated that the child was mine. I had no intention of letting someone like Jacob taint our son's eyes. As for me, of course, I planned to see Jacob, not because of anything his mother said, but because after Eve, everything he put me through in our past life, I had to see for myself how pathetic he had become. Jacob's mother looked displeased but didn't press further. She must have silently agreed with what I said. What I hadn't expected was Jacob's first question the moment I walked into his hospital room. "Where's the baby?" The way people around him reacted made me pause for a second, before I suddenly remembered something my mom had gossiped about. No one knew how the rumor started, but apparently, in addition to losing his legs, Jacob had also lost function in that part of a man's body. The kind of injury that meant he'd likely never have children again. At first, I hadn't believed it. I thought people were just exaggerating. But now, looking at his face and hearing that question the moment I stepped in, it had to be true. No wonder the first thing out of his mouth was about the baby. That realization made me smile. I couldn't help it. I hadn't expected Jacob to be so sensitive. Just a single expression from me was enough to set him off. His voice turned harsh as he snapped. "Emily, what's that supposed to mean?" He looked like he was about to struggle upright in bed when his mother quickly rushed to his side and tried to calm him. "Jacob, don't get worked up. You can see the baby whenever you want. Besides, Emily's here to take care of you. It's not convenient for her to bring the baby." Under her coaxing, Jacob gradually settled down. His mother continued. "Emily is your wife. How could she ever look down on you?" Then she turned to me and asked, "Right?" She tried to signal me with her eyes, hoping I'd play along, but she was doomed to be disappointed. I simply smiled faintly and shook my head. "No. First of all," I said, "I heard he lost his legs saving Anna, so let Anna take care of him." But Jacob's mother started, clearly preparing to object, but I raised my voice and cut her off. "Second, did Jacob not tell you I'm no longer his wife?" The moment the words left my mouth, the room fell silent. I had deliberately kept that fact hidden, waiting for this exact moment. Seeing the shock on both Jacob's and his mother's faces brought me a deep, undeniable satisfaction. What puzzled me, though, was Jacob's reaction. It made sense for his mother not to know, but Jacob himself looked just as stunned. It seemed he had somehow forgotten. Jacob's mother stood frozen for a while before finally yelling, "I don't agree. I do not agree with this divorce." I curled my lips into a cold smile, finding her hysteria almost laughable. The papers were signed. Since when did she get a say? Unwilling to accept the truth, Jacob's mother turned to him and grabbed his arm. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me she's lying." But Jacob stayed silent, and that silence made her feel like the sky was falling. Then she turned her rage on me, calling me ungrateful and unworthy, and even had the audacity to order me to reconcile with Jacob right away. As her accusations grew more and more vicious, I frowned and interrupted her. "Why don't you try getting your facts straight? Jacob was the one who insisted on the divorce for the sake of his precious first love. He didn't even care about his own child." That shut her up. Then Jacob spoke up again. "No matter what, I'm still the baby's father. Divorce doesn't change that." With each word he looked more and more smug, like he actually believed he could win custody just by saying it. His mother nodded, now more composed. "Jacob's right. Just because you divorce doesn't mean you can't get back together. You wouldn't let your child grow up without a father, would you?" Clearly, they thought they were making some compelling argument. All I could think was how ridiculously naive. I'd rather my son grow up without a father than have that man for a father. I couldn't help but let out a sharp laugh. If you have time to dream, you might as well spend it planning Jacob's wedding with Anna, because let's be real, given Jacob's condition, who else would want him? The moment I said it, both their faces turned an ugly shade of red. I'd had enough entertainment for one day. I didn't care to stay any longer. "Well, I'm done here. My baby's waiting at home." With that, I turned and walked out of the room. But I didn't expect to run into Anna at the door. I had never met her before, didn't even recognize her by face. I had only ever heard her name. But the moment I saw her, I just knew this was her. She looked like she had been standing there for quite a while. Maybe she'd heard everything. Not that I cared how she felt. Still, something about her struck me as off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I shook my head. I didn't dwell on it too much. Maybe it was just my imagination. But it didn't take long for me to realize why something about Anna had felt off. After returning home from the hospital, Jacob's mother didn't give up. She came back several more times, trying every angle she could think of to get me to reconcile with Jacob. Unfortunately for her, everything was spelled out in black and white on documents that Jacob himself had signed. There was nothing she could do. Even though her efforts were always fruitless, the constant harassment wore me down. As the saying goes, a thief has 1,000 days to plot, but the homeowner can't guard the door forever. Dealing with her day after day was enough to ruin anyone's peace of mind. Then one day, she actually tried to sneak into the house and steal the baby. That was the moment I realized, as long as they were around, this place would never be safe. So I quietly had my mom contact someone to help sell the house. Then under the cover of night, I took my baby and moved in with my father. By the time Jacob's mother figured out what had happened, it was already too late. But not long after, I heard that she had taken my advice. She convinced Anna to marry Jacob. The irony was laughable. The same woman who had once done everything in her power to tear them apart now begged Anna to marry her son out of gratitude. For saving his life, either way they got married. I thought the story had ended there, but I was wrong. I didn't know there was more to come until the police showed up at our door to investigate our family. That's when I learned the shocking truth. Anna was actually an undercover agent from another country. Jacob, after being lured to the northern border by her, had spent his time there unknowingly treating enemy soldiers. If nothing unexpected happened, both of them would be executed by firing squad. In that moment, I felt nothing but relief that I had divorced Jacob before. The investigation concluded quickly, and fortunately, our family wasn't implicated. But Jacob's parents didn't come out of it unscathed. His father's hair turned white overnight, and his mother lost her mind. When I heard the news, I just smiled. Good. Now I'd never have to deal with their drama again. But peace didn't last long. Soon, I received a call from the police station. They said Jacob had information about the enemy, but he would only share it on the condition that he see me. I frowned, cursing under my breath. What the hell is wrong with him? Still, the police had been respectful, so I agreed. I figured I could treat it as a small act of service to the country. Jacob was already in custody. I had no reason to be afraid or anxious. I thought he wanted to see me because of our son, but the moment I sat down, the first words out of his mouth were, "Emily, did you come back to life too?" I was stunned. It only took me a few seconds to understand Jacob had been reborn as well, but clearly he came back too late. Nothing could be undone now. That thought stayed buried in my heart. On the surface, I kept my expression neutral and asked, "Jacob, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke?" A police officer sat nearby, listening and recording our conversation. He might have lost his mind, but I hadn't. I knew exactly what was going on, but I wasn't about to admit anything out loud. Jacob, of course, had no clue. His bloodshot eyes locked onto mine. "You definitely came back. You were reborn to get revenge on me. Weren't you, Emily? How could you be so cruel?" If he really had returned to this world, then he should remember everything he did in the last one. I had no idea where he found the nerve to accuse me like this. Everything I'd done to him didn't even compare to 1/10 of what he had done to me. Still, I had to admit his current downfall was exactly what my rebirth deserved. I gave him a look full of challenge, watching as his expression twisted in madness. Then I took a step back and turned toward the officer, asking cautiously, "Excuse me, is he crazy or something?" I couldn't make sense of a single thing Jacob was saying. What rebirth? What revenge? I've never done anything like that. The officer noticed the fear on my face and immediately tried to comfort me. "Miss Emily, let me walk you out." I nodded quickly and followed him. Even after we had walked several steps away, I could still hear Jacob's angry shouting behind me. I curled my lips into a cold, emotionless smile. Despair? Good. Let him rot in it. Sit there and wait to die. Since no one could verify whether Jacob's ramblings were true or not, in the end, he was declared mentally unstable. No one takes a madman's word seriously. I had nothing to worry about. And besides, his execution was scheduled soon. On the day of the execution, a crowd gathered to watch the spectacle, but I simply sat on the balcony, cradling my son, letting him soak in the sunlight. Watching his sweet little smile, I couldn't help but kiss him again and again. In my heart I whispered, "It's finally over. The man who hurt us is gone from this world. My sweet baby, you can grow up in peace now."